Hey, in this video we're going to be talking about version control with Git, and specifically we'll be using the Git client called Sourcetree. So I'm going to make a repository for my code on Bitbucket, which is a website where you can get free hosting for your Git repositories. And if you aren't certain what Git is exactly, you should check out some of the other videos to get an introduction to it. So here I'm going to set up a repository on Bitbucket and try to put some code in there. Alright, so Bitbucket, you should sign up for an account here, and if it ever asks you about like Bitbucket Cloud or server or whatever, just try to go for just Bitbucket. So on the side you'll see a plus button for creating. You can choose repository. And let's see, workspace, you can choose whatever workspace you're messing with. Project I require now, I just have an untitled project that I put everything under now. And then you want to give a repository name that makes sense for what you're doing. So if I was doing this for my Game 110 class, Game 110, let's say demo repo. You should put your name in here if you're doing this for a class. I'll leave it private, so only I can access it and people that I add to it. And if you're doing it for a class, you'd be adding your instructor as a member of your repository so they can access your code. We don't want to readme a .gitignore file. No, we can just skip that because we'll be adding our own. And that's good. Create repository. Okay, so it brings you to the main page of your repository, but your repository is empty. I'm going to switch this over to HTTPS to get the URL for just a regular password-driven way to clone my repository, to get my own copy of it. And I need a place on my computer where I'm going to be putting this. So I've got this folder here that I'm called Get Demo, and I'd like to put my repository in here. I should also have Sourcetree installed. Sourcetree is a product from Atlassian. It's free, and so it kind of works pretty cleanly with Bitbucket. So let's see. I will copy that URL and launch Sourcetree. Okay. So I'll need a new tab to clone this URL. Okay. So hopefully it says this is a Git repository, so it is verified that it's going to work. And then we have to choose where it's going to go. I'm going to find that spot that I had. Here it is. That looks good, and we'll just clone it. Okay, demo already exists, so let's put it in a subfolder here. So once an empty folder that hasn't been created yet, so we can create it and fill it with your files, even though our repository is empty. Okay, great. So it cloned it, but again, it's empty, so there's going to be nothing there. I can press Open in Explorer, and it shows me only the .git folder. So this is a hidden folder. You won't see it unless you have go to View and you have Hidden Items checked. We should also have file name extensions checked so that we can see the actual file names of things that go in here. So now, what I'd like to do is add some code in here, some projects, and then save those things on Bitbucket, on my host, so that I can get them on a different computer or share them with my instructor or a colleague or whatever. So I have a couple of things that I want to do. Here I have a Unity project, and here I have a Visual Studio project. We'll put the Visual Studio project in there first. Okay. So I've added this into the same folder. Now if I go to Sourcetree, it recognizes that there's some new files in there, unstaged files, ones that I haven't selected to be saved in my repository, to be tracked by my version control. So some of these are important, some of these are not important, like these ones in the obj directory and the bin directory. Those are ones that Visual Studio will automatically generate for me, and I really don't need them. I just need like my solution and my source file and maybe a couple of other things. But it's not always obvious which files you need. Thankfully, the community has provided this. Visual Studio Git ignore. Let's look for that. So on GitHub, you can find some really useful git ignore files. And the git ignore file will contain file patterns, and if they match files in your repository, those files will just be ignored and they won't be checked in or committed. And that's great for us because we don't want some of these temporary files. It would just be a waste of time and space. So I can download this. I could go to raw, download this file, save as, and let's save it as, let's go to our repository. There it is. And I want to save this in the project directory, I believe. I think that would be a good idea. Put it in here, at least the solution directory. Let's see. I'll save it here and then we'll see if we need to move it. So I want to give it the name .gitignore with nothing else on it. And hopefully it lets me do that. No, it still put the .txt at the end. So Windows doesn't always play nicely with .gitignore, having the dot in the front and not having a recognized file type. So let me see if I can go fix that. Hello world, here we go. .gitignore, no .text. Okay, that looks good. So let's see if Sourcetree works. Yep. So if you go back into Sourcetree, it now has forgotten about, it doesn't even see those other files that match those patterns in the .gitignore file. That's great. These are only the files that we actually need to add. Our .gitignore file has actually been modified. It's new, so we want that. Our solution, our source file, and whatever else going in here. So I'll stage all of these. That sets them up, gets them ready to be committed, to be saved. So I'll say added hello world project and .gitignore. Okay. So it's good to leave a commit message that makes sense and is useful so that when you look back at your history, you know exactly what happened. All right, so in Sourcetree, you're in this working copy view and you stage your files, you describe what this change set is going to do, and then you press commit. I wish this button wasn't all the way over here, but it is. Commit, great. So now everything has been saved, but it has not been sent to Bitbucket. It's saved locally on my machine, so that if I ever made any changes, I could go back and revert them or review them. If you go to the master branch, you can see our change set right there, the list of files that changed, and even you can look at each individual file and what it contains and what changes were made. So that's great. Now I'm going to go and add another project here. I will add a Unity project. So, all right, let's open in Explorer. Let's go to get our first platformer project. Drop that in there. Okay. All right, so now Sourcetree recognizes a ton of files. Unity creates lots of files, and most of these are extra ones, and they take up a lot of space. There are some important ones like the assets, but if you see any that say library as one of the folders, that's a temporary file that Unity will regenerate if you bring it to another computer. So we don't need it. That's the perfect job for a Unity git ignore. Okay. Let's grab this file and do the same steps. First platformer is where we're going to save it. .gitignore. And I wish I could just save it that way. Let's see if it does it. Oh, yeah. All right. So it left off the .txt. So that was a little faster. So in my first platformer folder, I now have .gitignore, and then I have all of the other files from my Unity project. And going into Sourcetree, it should make it many fewer files. So now I don't have any of those library files in here. So I'm sure that it's just the important stuff. So I'll stage all of those. Some of my files are big, that's fine. Stage all of those files. Added first platformer project. And that looks good. So we'll commit that. Great. So now that things are committed, they're saved locally on my machine, but I want to push them to the remote repository, to the server on Bitbucket. For that, I press this button that says push. All right. Yeah, I want to push everything. This may take a bit. Depends on how big those files are, how good your internet is. And it may pop up and ask you for your password if it hasn't saved it. There is a password manager system that may also pop up, and it doesn't matter that much which password manager you choose. Any of them should work, I guess. I haven't played around too much with it. But just choose manager and make sure it's chosen for all of them. All right. And that's pretty good. So I can check out my master branch, and it has both of my change sets here with all of those files. My working copy, there's no changes to look at, but if I look in my actual file browser, I can see I have all of my projects and all my files. So I can work with them here, see the changes in Sourcetree so that I can commit them and push them. And then to verify that all of this worked, I can go back to Bitbucket, to my repository page, refresh it, and it should show me the files that I now have in there. So first platformer and hello world. Yep, looks good. I can also look here at the history of my changes, just like in Sourcetree. All right, so I hope that has given you a good idea of how to use this, and that it is useful for you in the future. Version control can do lots of things to save us a lot of time and a lot of headaches, losing our files or being unable to share them with other people. See you later.